Hi, welcome. How are you doing? I hope you had a wonderful day. This is my husband, Dr. Richard Cohen, and I'm Stacy Rosman Cohen. And today we're doing a show on an overview of the pathology of.
Well, we're doing an overview on psychopathology. And after you have an understanding of this, perhaps it could help you being able to make better choices in relationships. Now, I'm going to start off by giving you an overview of what psychopathology is.
Wait, hold on. One real important thing. Can you please leave a message on the bottom, like, comment, and share our video? Thank you. I just want to leave that at the beginning right here. Back to you.
Well, hi, Stacy.
Hi, honey.
Now, what we're going to do is I'm going to talk about an overview of psychopathology, and I'm going to tell you first about mood disorders that are divided into depression and bipolar disorders. They're the two of the big mood disorders. Then we're going to talk about psychosis, and this is where people are out of contact with reality. I'm going to describe symptoms of this so you can identify this. Then I'm going to talk about the different kinds of anxiety disorders and symptom substitute for anxiety, such as phobias, obsessive compulsive disorders, and we'll go into some detail about this. Then we're going to talk about personality disorders. These type of people may be bad for relationships because these people have a long-standing maladaptive way of dealing with the world, with usually intense, unstable interpersonal relationships, and they cause other people to suffer, although they don't suffer themselves. Where in contrast to the anxiety disorders, which we just mentioned, where these people are in tremendous psychological pain, their ego dystonic to their problems, and they're very uncomfortable. And then we're going to talk about addictions and substance abuse disorders. So that's basically an overview of psychopathology, Stacy. So what we're going to do, first of all, is talk about mood disorders. Depression is a syndrome and not a symptom. These people have the following symptoms for usually a 2-week period of time. They have anhedonia, which is a Greek term that takes from donia, means being able to feel pleasure, and ana means no ability to feel pleasure. So they have a decreased ability to feel pleasure. They have a depressed mood. They have a lot of trouble with usually early morning awakening, where anxiety disorders have problems with sleep onset. In contrast to that, they have a change in appetite. It's usually a decreased appetite. They usually have real problems with energy levels. Some of them can't get out of bed in the morning. They have real problems with focusing. They're very inattentive. So these people feel hopeless and helpless. They're withdrawn and secluded, and sometimes they get to the point where they have suicidal thoughts, which are psychiatric emergencies, which you have to really, it makes just like a heart attack will make a cardiologist ears go wide open when somebody mentions the word suicide.
Right.
It's a very important thing, and I have to evaluate how quickly they regress under stress, what kind of support systems they have, and to be able to determine what kind of suicidal threat they are. It's important to understand that in someone's life, 99% of people have suicidal thoughts, Stacy.
Really?
Yeah, and the other 1% are liars.
Oh, okay.
So that's important to understand.
Like other things.
Yeah, and then people can have big mood swings, and these are called people with bipolar disorders.
Okay.
What these people, they have depressive symptoms, and then they go into periods of time when they're very elated. They have racing thoughts in their head. They have flight of ideas where one thought goes right into the next thought. They have tangential thinking when they go off in tangents, which is a lot different than someone who's depressed has, which has their thought process is more organized than that. These people put themselves in dangerous situations. They have a great deal of, they go on buying sprees. They spend money they don't have. They have sex that's very dangerous, and these people tend to get very high. So That's in contrast to the unipolar disorder where people that are just depressed.
Okay.
So these people in relationships, these people, like the anxiety disorder, suffer a lot, and they can handle long-term interpersonal relationships. In contrast to personality disorders, if the other person can handle a mood, what you have to ask yourself whenever you're going to get into a relationship, everybody has issues. Can I handle the other person's issues? So these are really important things to understand. So now, so we just talked about mood disorders. Now we're going to talk about anxiety disorders, Stacy.
All right, I'll be right back. You talking to the camera. I'll be right back.
Okay. So Stacy left us just for a second, but anxiety disorders, these people have basic id versus superego conflicts, which meaning their basic drive, which are usually on a subconscious level, they feel guilty about. So, and it's very important to understand that any thought, feeling, or dream that comes into our head, we have to accept with equanimity and not feel guilty about our thoughts. People that have neurotic conflicts feel very guilty about their thoughts, and therefore they suffer a lot, but they don't cause other people to suffer. So if you can handle their issues, they would be a strong candidate for good relationships. Now, these people also, the way they suffer is they can develop symptom substitute for the anxiety, such as phobias. They can get and what a phobia means is you're more scared of situations than it would normally tend to be. And you might get frightened of bugs. You might have an agoraphobia, which is where you really are very frightened to go out into crowd shopping centers. You have a fear of having panic attacks. And
seems to be very common.
Well, actually,
agoraphobia.
Agoraphobia is very common. It's endogenous, and we find it's in about 9% of the population to some extent. The degree of it is greatly. Some people have a very strict haven of safety where they feel just safe in their room and they can't go other people. Their haven of safety is a large area. And in treating them, it's really, we treat them, the best kind of treatment is systematic desensitization with flooding in vivo and in vitro, meaning that there's an anxiety curve. It's a bell-shaped curve as it goes up and down. And these people tend to avoid shopping centers and crowds, and they run away from it. And it gets reinforced that they feel so much panic in these situations that they're scared the next time. I've had to do in vitro treatment with them, having them imagine, it's called guided imagery, having them imagine these situations. And then I also have them go into in vivo. I have taking them into shopping centers and have them stay in long enough so the bell-shaped curve goes down and they feel calmness in the situation. So these people, in terms of relationships, if you can handle their avoidance behavior, can be, and you have to ask yourself that question: can I handle these neurotic conflicts? It's important to understand that these people have made it up to the Oedipal stage of development to be able to handle neurotic conflicts, which 60% of people in our country haven't made it there. So it's very important to understand that this is a sign of health that somebody's neurotic. And if you call a psychiatrist neurotic, they'll consider this a compliment. Now, in contrast to the personality disorders, which we'll talk about in just a second, the personality disorders are a little different because they haven't even made it up to the Oedipal stage of development. So they're dealing with pre-Oedipal conflicts, which is very important to understand. So these personality disorders, if I could explain to you, they have a long-standing maladaptive way of dealing with the world, with usually intense, unstable interpersonal relationships. These personality disorders can be quite charming, and they can get you into relationships, but they're not good at maintaining relationships.
Okay.
As Stacy explained to me, we wanted to tie all psychopathology into relationships. And the purpose of the show, Stacy explained to me, is we want to give you this overview so you'll make better choices in relationships.
But you can do this in all relationships. Obviously, we're here talking about into relationships. Well, I guess we're talking about all relationships, aren't we then? Because it's always empowered by adversity, and guys versus dolls together. It's all about love. So the two are about love and inspiration and education. So
that's Stacy, that's exactly right. And I agree 100% with what you're saying. And what we did already is we talked about mood disorders, anxiety disorders, and now we're talking about personality disorders. And as I told you, these people have a long-standing maladaptive way of dealing with the world, and they cause other people to suffer. They don't suffer themselves, and they're very ego-centonic to their problems, meaning they're comfortable with their problems. They just make other people suffer. And when they come to see me in therapy, it's a real battle to treat them because I have to make them uncomfortable with their issues, which a lot of times they don't want to get to that point.
Right.
So now it's like a lot of research is done right now. We're going to talk about a specific type of personality called the borderline personality disorder.
Okay.
Now, Stacy, these people have a lot of problems modulating their affect because they see the world as black and white.
What does that mean? For example, can you give us like an analogy?
Sure, I'd be glad to. They see everything in terms of extremes. They see themselves, other people, and situations as black and white, and they can't see shades of gray. Meaning, so therefore, because they see things in terms of extremes, they can't control their affects and actions. And what they tend to do is they have a discontrol of this, and they can't modulate. These people are they were stuck at the research has shown they're stuck at the rapprochement phase when they're very younger of separation individuation. The way they form.
And where, like in age-wise, where exactly is that?
That's probably between the ages of 1 and 2. And what that means is their mother gave them, let's say they were breastfed, and their mother gave them the breast, and they felt like they were all wonderful, and the mother's all wonderful to supply them with this. And the mother would take them away, and most people would say, well, my mother's a nice person, but they would see the mother as all horrible, and they'd see themselves as all horrible. And so they see things in seems extremes. And then as they got older, therapy is supposed to synthesize their ego and put the two halves together in these borderlines. But as these people got older, let's say they got to college and the professor would call for something, they'd see it, they'd see the pay. Well, the professor might not like me, and he's all horrible, and I'm all horrible, and they'd overreact to that. They tend to get very histrionic and overreact to situations because people usually, and when they come in and see me in therapy, it's a battle because at the first session they say, oh, doctor, you're so wonderful, and I worry about that. Then the second session or the third session they may come in and they say, doctor, you're all horrible, and I have to get through transference to help them modulate their affect. I'm not so wonderful, Stacy, and I'm not so horrible. I'm somewhere in between, and so is the borderline personality disorder, and so are situations. So I have to help them through transference. See myself as not so wonderful and not so horrible, but it's a battle in therapy because of the extremes they see in relationships, and so it's going to be hard if you get involved with a borderline personality disorder with this. Now, there's a continuum between narcissism, where borderline personality disorder, and you can go south of disorder with borderline personality and become psychotic. So this is a continuum that people have. Narcissism is another personality disorder on a less continuum. These people make gestures and pretenses of love, but it's in relationships, but it takes time for the other person to see they're just a branch on their tree enhancing their self-esteem. They see relationships.
You have a song about that, don't you?
I wrote a song about that too. I won't sing it at this time, but there's no analogy in nature to describe their personality because they're so preoccupied with their own success and power. Loving for them, Stacy, is seeing themselves in others. They don't know anybody else is in pain because there's nothing for them to gain. Usually people that don't have a narcissistic personality
Right.
is able to feel empathy when the other person's in pain. These people run away. A telltale sign is when you get sick, the narcissistic person runs away because there's nothing for them to, they're not going to nurture you. So this is important to understand. And as we're talking about personality disorders, it's important to understand that you may get involved. There's also a dependent personality disorder, and they can smell out somebody that's very nurturing. And so they're going to, when they on a subconscious level.
So nurturing, so somebody who's empathetic and compassionate, is that they smell that?
Yeah, they smell that out, and they get involved with. They get involved with that person, and what
people
happens
like me,
is,
right?
That, yeah, exactly. You're very nurturing and kind.
I'm joking, but yes, I am.
And you are
very
definitely that.
Very grateful. I'm always very grateful.
But I don't really have that dependency needs like that. So, but there's so many other wonderful characteristics you have, Stacy, and you're very spiritual. You're very loving, giving. You're and besides being so empathetic and really so bright and knowledgeable. So you have so many wonderful things. But these people,
yes, let's help them.
These people, what happens is eventually this kind of relationship may burn out, because the person with the dependency is not going to feel good about themselves. Why is this person doing things for me all the time? And their self-esteem is going to go down. And unless you're somebody's mother, you're going to get burned out nurturing this person over and over again after 5-10 years, and eventually you're going to burn out. So this relationship, in most cases, although I never say never and never say always with this, could burn out. So that's important to understand. And as we talked about the neurosis, it's important to understand these people have made it up to the Oedipal stage of development, but they smell other people out. They're problem people, choose problem people, and their neurotic conflicts can intertwine on a subconscious level. So those are important things to understand.
Okay, that's heavy. I know, I get that, but can you say that, rephrase it, so everyone can understand what you just said? Thank you.
That people with a neurotic conflict may smell out somebody with obsessive compulsive symptoms, will smell out with somebody who would be able to handle that. And therefore, and relationships like this can go on for 40, 50 years on a good level. So this is, I'm saying that my point here is, and let me summarize, that people with neurosis can get into very healthy, good relationships with the right person. So that's important to understand. Now, we've talked about, Stacy, we've talked about mood disorders, anxiety disorders, and now we're going to, and we talked about personality disorders. Now we're going to talk about psychosis.
Okay.
People who have psychosis, who have psychotic disorders, are out of contact with reality. And that means that they're not aware of reality. They're in their own head most of the time. And if I can make this statement, they're usually decatexed from external objects and hypercatexed into their ego itself, into a secondary narcissism. Stacy, let me explain to you what that means.
Yes, because I know what this means, but I want other people to understand this. So please break it down. Take your time.
Sure. What this means is that all their energy vectors are going inward into their own head rather than relating to the outside world. So they're not relating to other people, and they'd be a disaster in relationships, because they're like you are when you're sleeping and dreaming or daydreaming during the day. Their whole day is decatexed from other people. It's inward into their own dream. So you could understand it better. These people are living their daydream or a dream all day long, where they have hallucinations. They see things that aren't there. They hear things that aren't there. They have fixed false beliefs in their head, which are delusions. They have ideas of reference, where if they go outside their house, they think other people are talking about them, or they think the television and radio are talking about them. They have thought broadcasting, where their thoughts can be broadcast outside their head. They think that other people can read their thoughts, and they also have thought insertion, where they think you could stick thoughts inside their head. They have a lack of ego boundaries because of this. They don't know where you start and the other person stops. So this will be the disaster in relationships.
Very complicated. It's complicated. It's very sad, and but that's something that with medication, right? People can become fine and stabilized. Right?
You're exactly right. These people have an overload of dopaminergic receptors in the substantia nigra of their brain. Mm-hmm. And if we can actually block the dopaminergic receptor sites with typical or atypical antipsychotic medicine, you can get these people functioning fairly well. And the problem with this, I know in therapy, is they don't do this volitionally. But what happens is that they have, if I can explain this to you.
Yes, please.
They massively use defense mechanisms such as projection and denial.
Okay.
And what that means is that they think they deny what their problem is, and they don't think they have problems, and they stop taking their medications.
Right.
And therefore, their non-compliance is not volitional. It's part of the disorder. So that's something I have to deal with in therapy. So that's
wow.
So that's important to understand. Besides giving them, they need to borrow a strong therapist's ego, and supportive psychotherapy with reality orientation is also very helpful for them.
Right.
So that's important to understand. Now, other main things I treat, you might find in relationships, are it's a very overused. It's a very serious thing, and people suffer a lot at work. Thank you, Stacy. And people can have problems with inattentiveness, hyperactivity, and impulsivity, which is an attention deficit disorder with hyperactivity. It can also occur without the hyperactivity, and these people have problems focusing. And although they may be very good in relationships, because of their inattentiveness, they have a lot of problems functioning in the world. Now, it's an overuse diagnosis, and the doctor has to be do a very thorough evaluation, because some people may use as an excuse for not doing well in occupationally and in school. So, but if you can actually, but it's a definite problem, and if you diagnose it well and get them on the right medications, this can, and give them some cognitive behavioral therapy, they can improve greatly. So that's important to be able to identify that too. Also, a very overused diagnosis, but it's a horrible thing, and it's there. People over major traumas, and they suffer a lot, and these are called post-traumatic stress disorders. And what happens is these people have no preparatory anxiety to deal with events in their life. Hence, they deal with it after the fact with intrusive memories, nightmares, flashbacks, an easy startle response.
So what does an easy startle response mean? I know what it means. Can you share so people understand, for example, if this, might happen to you, something, you'll know what I'm talking about.
Stacy, what it means is an easy startle response is that you hear a noise, and most people would just, there's a noise, you'll jump, and you'll get very jumpy, and it's with triggers that remind you of the traumatic event or horrible. And you have,
so it could be a gunshot, or it could be a car accident, it could be like anything that, it could any type of trauma that you go through in life that's going to bring any invasive, intrusive memory, that you would get a response from some kind of noise or something like that.
That's exactly right. And you have very good, Stacy, and you have hypervigilance and scanning of the environment with this. And you start to have, and you become so intense that you can have depersonalization responses, and you get very withdrawn and fearful and actually phobic at times. So that can go on, and you can have phobic responses and have a great deal of avoidance. And the way to treat this is abreaction ventilatory psychotherapy is very important to have them, because they had no preparatory anxiety to deal with this horrible event. Most of the time, when you have something bad happen to you, and know something's going to bad happen, you can prepare for it. But these people have no preparatory anxiety to deal with the trauma, hence they're dealing with it after the fact. And if I can help them in a safe environment in therapy, get them to abreact, they could get a lot better, and there can be a great deal of improvement. Now, so far we've talked about, Stacy, mood disorders, anxiety disorders, personality disorders, psychosis, attention deficit disorders, post-traumatic stress disorders. Another thing that's important to understand, and you may not, because people utilize denial as defense mechanisms with addictive diseases, and people can get it. And addiction to alcohol, people use denial about it. You won't even, and you might think they're going to tell you, oh, I just have I can handle it. But these people, the way you can tell if somebody's an alcoholic is they have tolerance. They develop withdrawal symptoms. And by the way,
tolerance to what? Alcohol, you mean?
They get tolerance. They need more and more to get the effects of alcohol. And what happens is, when withdrawal is horrible, because when you reach stage 4 of withdrawal, delirium tremens, 10% of people die. And if you got to get them to the hospital so you can hydrate them and sedate them so they don't die. Where withdrawal from other things, such as heroin, you suffer a lot. You get rhinorrhea, diarrhea, water's coming all out of your body every place. These people just suffer a lot, but they don't die from this unless there's dehydration going on. So cocaine is a scourge of the earth. It's horrible. People get very high on it, but when you come off of it, it gives you the worst kind of depression there possibly is. So these people their sole motivation in life is to get that next fix of the drug, and it's hard for them to focus on other people.
You did some work with, or a study, or your residency with alcohol and drugs. What was it that you did?
Well, during my residency, I actually edited a textbook on substance abuse. I had a federal grant that was used in about 30 medical schools in the country. And when I was I was in the Department of Psychiatry, Family Medicine, and even otolaryngology. And I had to treat otolaryngology. I rounded with the chairman of the department for over 15 years. And we saw that people that had smoking addictions and alcohol addictions had a high percentage of tumors in the head and neck, and they suffered a lot. They had so many narcissistic losses, they became depressed. It was interesting that with all these losses and all this deforming surgeries they had to go through, a big majority of them continued to drink and smoke even after such deformities took place.
I know somebody, who had throat cancer and had a tracheotomy, and they still continue to smoke.
So
remember that clearly.
So that's important to understand. Now, also with addictive diseases, there's sexual addictions, and you got to be really careful, because these people, it's sad for them. They equate sex with love. And that's not really, sex is one part of a loving relationship. But these people aren't, because they felt very lost as children. They get addicted to sex, and that's their number one goal in relationships, instead of seeing relationships as so much more than that, where you can invest and share feelings in another person. They're only interested in that in a relationship. And so they were so lost as children, and they equated sex with love. So it's very important. These people will not be good for you in relationships unless they get some help. Now, the good thing is a lot of these problems.
So let me ask you a question. What's the percentage of getting the girl that you want, or the relationship, or the two people getting their relationship, their soulmate? What percentage of people actually get to find and be with their soulmate like you and me.
Well, that's really kind of you to say. I feel like I've hit the jackpot with you, Stacy. But like,
Thank you. I feel the same way too.
But like, I think it's very important to understand that a lot of people do settle, especially as you become a little older. But when you get older, you also can really know yourself better, and you can really know quickly the kind of person that you want to be with. And so I think it's a very small percentage. Most people do settle. So if I were to estimate with my 43 years of clinical experience, I'd say somewhere between 2 and 5%.
2 and 5%.
Yeah.
2 and 5%.
Yeah.
Yeah. I'm there. I believe you. I really believe it.
So what we did so far, I tried to give you an overview of psychopathology. I talked about anxiety disorders for you. I talked about and mood disorders. I talked about personality disorders. I talked about psychosis, which involves the schizophrenia and other psychotic disorders. I talked about attention depth disorders. I talked about post-traumatic stress disorders, and I talked about substance abuse disorders. And that basically gave you a really solid overview of psychopathology. And hopefully, when you get into when you start dating somebody, you're going to see them in a whole bunch of different situations. So you can see what they're really like, see what they're like with their friends.
So you say date for practice.
Yeah, that's
right?
That's a really important thing. When you get out of a relationship, you don't want to get into a rebound too quickly. Work through the loss, work through the stages of loss,
Which are what?
Well, the stages of losses are, first of all, you might be in massive denial, then you might go through an anger phase, then eventually bargaining, then acceptance, and you can move on with your life. And once you do that, you're very vulnerable. You don't want to have something that's a rebound, and you want to kind of date for practice and weed people out.
But you don't want to lose your vulnerability,
no,
right? You don't want to get hardened. You don't want to lose your vulnerability. You want to get smarter. You want to antennas want to go up, but you want to learn certain, like what the things that you've been just talking about and describing, the different types of traits of people. Just have your antenna for different types of traits. So to be aware, it's to be aware.
Yeah, exactly. What you really kind of want to be able to do is you want to weed people out on a subconscious level and date for practice, but also be, as Stacy just said, which is really important, be vulnerable. Be able to, vulnerability is a strength and not a weakness. And you have to really feel good enough about yourself to be able to get vulnerable, because you have to be willing to get hurt. You have to be able to get vulnerable, because unless you can do that, you're not going to win. You'll just be having superficial relationships, and you won't be able to get. And you have to be able to fall back on yourself. Don't be able to put your self-esteem in the other person's lap, and being able to have trust enough to be vulnerable that you'll be able to get involved in healthy, good relationships.
Yes. That's what we want. Healthy, good relationships. Make this world a better place. One day at a time. Right? 1 moment at a time.
Stacy, you couldn't have said that better. And if there's any questions, I'd be glad to answer them, or Stacy would be glad to answer them. So let's see if there's any questions.
Hi, Jody. I don't have my glasses on. Here they are. Thank you. 1 second. Hi, Karen. Everybody's saying hi. Love bombing. Love bombing. Yes. Narcissists. I was talking about this with my masseuse who helps me. She helps me with a lot of healing modalities. And she was telling me, we were talking about a relationship that she was in once with a narcissist, and she was totally love bombed. Do you know what love bombing is, Doc?
I do not know.
Don't you know when a guy love bombs you? He he a narcissist. He says like all these. He's the night.
So in other words, you're telling me
the night.
So in other
And
words,
shining armor. He take care. He's all of a sudden he takes care of this and that and this, and he's wonderful and he's great. He's there to help if there's a problem. He'll pick up the pieces and make everything all better. And he gets you to depend on him. And all of a sudden he bites you.
you're talking about.
And he's mean. He gets really mean and controlling, and then everything gets manipulated and spun around, and it becomes a nightmare. That's love bombing. Thank you for putting that.
So that's for Stacy. You're describing there's someone that's very narcissistic that makes gestures and pretenses of love, and you're just a branch on their tree. And they're very charming at the beginning, and they give everything to you, and then it all goes away. So that makes sense.
Okay, now Jody said, I think the success comes when you realize you can be alone. You and life is complete.
That's very important. Before you can get involved in a good relationship, you have to be able to be alone and be comfortable with yourself. And so
Jody, a lot of reflection. I don't know. To me, I found I had to do a lot of reflection to get to know who I was, to find out what was important to me to grow, to be able to be my best person to somebody else and the right person for me. And that took a really long time. Do you guys reflect? Jody, Karen? Because you want, and I know you guys want to find somebody to spend the rest of your life with, just like that's how I felt a couple of months ago. I knew Doc from a long time ago, so things happen really quick here. But yeah, definitely. I know though, and I had boxes. Doc didn't know about boxes. I told him about boxes.
She told me about boxes.
Have boxes. Okay. So my non-negotiables. He had to be this, 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 and he had to be this. I had my boxes. I had more boxes than that. Very specific. So, but also, you always have to compromise. But I knew what was the most important things that were non-negotiables. I had my non-negotiables. So those were like the first 3 boxes. And then I would go down afterwards. But I had to do that to find out and figure out what I really wanted, because I kept going for the wrong type of person.
Tell me more about your boxes.
Okay. You guys tell me, do you guys have boxes? Like, Jody, you agree? Okay, somebody tell me, do you guys also have boxes? Jody and Karen, come on, that's serious. And I have allergies, and with this weather here, okay. I was in a relationship my entire life until 2019. And since then, I'm finally learning about myself and think I've done it. It's a constant journey. I think we're constantly learning about ourselves and growing and changing. One day there's certain things that are important, and then next week other things are important, and then the next week they kind of merge together, and then something happens, life throws you a curveball and you don't know what to do. You kind of have to surrender, but you don't realize that until you're like flat on your back and you can't move because something in life happens, and then you come back again. It's your turn, Doc.
Well, I agree completely.
They know what I'm talking about.
I agree completely with what I'm saying. I wonder, as you talked about boxes, I wasn't aware of these boxes that you're explaining. I can see it. The way you explain it very literally well. And I'm just wondering, do other people feel like that they have certain boxes that need to be checked? And are there non-negotiables? What are the non-negotiables?
Non-negotiables? What it would have been a non-negotiable to me? I need to be with somebody who's very intelligent. I need to be with a great lover. I need to be with somebody who is not controlling, who loves me for me and accepts me for me and wants me to grow.
So what you're talking about is it's very important in a relationship that you don't want to control the other person, that you respect their autonomy and independence, and you want them to grow in a lot of different ways. You'd want to water them and have them be
Right.
the best they can be.
Of course. And I would want it, I would definitely, because I'm a nurturing, empathetic, compassionate, loving, kind person and want to always help other people and animals and the trees and the bugs and whatever. I just want the world to be a better place, sending peace and love out to the universe always. I love you. Yes.
So those are the non-negotiables. Now, let's. Jody's making a really nice comment here. I'm reading some of it. But what was your boxes? What were they? If you feel comfortable talking about your boxes.
Okay, so then there was a spiritual side. I remember saying to Dr. Joe, I'm never going to meet anybody because I wanted to be able to meet, I really want to meet my soulmate. You know, I mean, I'm 61 years old. I dated, you know, lots of other things happen in life, lots of life experiences, learned a lot of things, loved a lot, lost a lot, learned a lot, gained a lot, and now I'm exactly where I wanted to be. Apparently, I manifested appropriately, perfectly, in alignment what I wanted. I was very clear with my non-negotiables. I wanted my soulmate who I knew was looking for me. I kept saying he's looking for me anyway, and that we're going to be meeting. As I was dating, I would be on Match or somebody would fix me up, and I knew exactly what I was looking for, and that person was going to touch my heart like nobody did before. And I knew Dr. Ritchie from years before. I contacted him to be on my podcast because years ago, when I knew him, he knew, you know, I was working on healing and myself, and he was into athletics and I was into athletics, and we both had ankle injuries. And I told him about a book that I was writing back then called Empowered by Adversity, and he said, "Well, why don't you write it?" He said, "Are you afraid of being successful?" And I was like, "No." So I saw him on my Facebook and I contacted him and I said, "Hey, why don't you do some podcasts with me?" And we got together, and this was just a couple months ago. So we already knew each other super well. And we decided after about 10 days, he proposed to me and we got married. But he was everything. He hit those boxes. He was my soulmate. He knew everything about me. He could see right through me. He knew things because I shared things with him, but I only shared things with him because I was comfortable with him. That back then I shared certain things. We were on that same kind of like level where it was kind of woo-woo looked at maybe years ago back then. And today it's not. It's alternative medicine. You know, it's fitness. And he's a doctor, a highly regarded doctor who's double board certified. And, you know, we would talk about relationships and things like that, but we didn't go out back then, and we just fell in love, and he was that perfect guy. So if we want to really talk about boxes and go down, I would want somebody who is athletic, who's also very compassionate. Somebody who wants somebody who's compassionate. I've been through a lot. He's been through a lot. You've been through a lot. We've all been through a lot. So we want somebody who's compassionate. When something happens, that understands that I have an injury. I'm going to need extra help. It's going to be 6 weeks. It might be a year. It might be longer. And it might be permanent, whatever it is. So, you know, understand that that's something in a relationship that's very important for a person for you to know that you can trust, that you can depend on that person to be there when things are great and when things get really tough and challenging.
It's important to understand that, you know, that it's relationships are not always going to be harmony and bliss, but if you try to be empathetic to the person, listen to them, their feelings, the way you can tell, you don't have to think alike, but research has shown that relationships work out best when there's trust. Three things: trust, that you can really trust the other person with your feelings, knowing that they're going to be there for you. Communication, which you can, and communication takes place on a feeling level, not just superficial cocktail party chatter, where you can really talk to them on a feeling level, and you don't have to think alike all the time, but you have to have the ability to compromise differences, and that's really important. And so those are the three ways you can tell if a relationship is going to work out: trust, communication, and the ability to compromise
What
differences.
do? We have board meetings, right? I want to share it, Richie,
Okay.
because it's
You're
something
a
I
little
think
embarrassed.
but I think I want to share something. I think that it's wonderful, something to share this in a relationship. This is really nice. We have board meetings. The two of us have board meetings, and we talk about, whatever needs to be talked about, the important things. So, but we set time, whenever let's have a board meeting. Let's have a board meeting, and it's fun. It makes it a lot of fun, and it's a lot of fun anyway. I don't know. I'm laughing and having the best time I've ever had in my life. So I want you to also find somebody like I was able to find and have the best time of your life.
That's very nice, Stacy. That makes me feel wonderful inside that you could say those things. Thank you.
It's true.
Yes. Now, I don't know if you wanted to, some people are commenting on things.
All right, I'm going to read.
And you might want to go up. Jody said a lot of things here.
Thank you so much, Jody.
If you go up.
Wait a minute. Yeah. Abandonment issue. Me too. I used to have an abandonment issue. Jody's talking about an abandonment issue from childhood. And so wishy-washy with men. I totally with you on that. Can we talk about that, please? Doc?
Well, what she's talking about is she felt really abandoned at times, and she needs a man who really she's going to know is going to always be there for her. It's not going to be wishy-washy. It's going to have one foot in the door and one foot out the door. She wants to know there's some consistency. She talked about
it's so hard. This is really hard. I'm so behind you with this, Jody. This was my biggest problem: abandonment issues and dealing with men and choosing the wrong man, and kept choosing the same guy.
Yeah, Jody talked about a man who she had a blind date with for coffee, and she thought he was interesting, and he said he would like to see her again, and then he texted her with some silly remarks for 3 days, and then he never followed that out. And with some of maybe Jody's issues she's gone through, he wasn't really sensitive to that, and it wasn't the man for her. And what happened is she was able to weed him out and not waste time and go on to maybe meet somebody that she'd be more compatible to her. And as we talked about before on the show, dating for practice and weeding people out. So, and then so
what are the first 3 things that you recommend that the woman look for?
Well, you want to, I guess, be very important as you're weeding them out. You want to make sure that they have good eye contact with you, that they don't talk about themselves all the time. They want to get interested in what you're all about, your feelings. Maybe you might want to cut them a little bit of break at the beginning because maybe there's some anxiety, and you could judge that. And maybe they might talk a little bit more about themselves. But if this continues on the second date and they don't try to get to understand what makes you tick, you might suspect some kind of narcissism, why they're so self-absorbed. You want to find somebody who can invest and share feelings in you as a person and not so wrapped up in themselves. And somebody who doesn't get gratification out of and get their self-esteem out of being able to be in a relationship with you, to see you as an autonomous, independent person who they can share and invest feelings in. So that's important to see.
Okay, a lot of information.
I think that those are really important things. And I hope this was very informative to people who are dating right now, and to be able to, and it could actually save them a lot of time and heartache to be able to understand. We talked about psychopathology, and I gave you an overview of it, a very short overview, but it may give you enough information to help you in the weeding out process, as we talked about, to date for practice and weed people out in a relationship.
Thank you. I want to thank you so much for sharing all this information. And this is our Sunday.
Yeah, well, we can have another podcast if people would like next Sunday.
On
well, why don't we think about it during the week? We'll talk about it.
We'll surprise them.
And we'll have something that would be surprising.
Yeah, we'll probably end up combining it again, because we always seem to combine it, right?
I think that's definitely correct, Stacy.
So yeah, I'm trying to figure out how to construct this whole background thing. I'm working with it. I'm playing around with it. We're in construction.
Who is Gilad?
Gilad.
Gilad
Is that my girlfriend? Okay, so you know what? I wanted to do the podcast on what you did your thesis on. Remember with the ASEA, about the things that were in the ASEA that we were talking about? That's what I want to do next week. So Gilad is who I learned about the ASEA from, and she co-hosts sometimes. So I don't know if that's actually on the outside, but we're still talking and everything. But that's who Gilad is, and she's wonderful. She's a friend with the ASEA that next week we're going to be talking. Can you explain it now that I remembered what it is?
Well, what it is from, I don't have a great deal of knowledge about this, but it's important to understand that there's mitochondria, and they're organelles and cells. And what they do is they release, there's the Krebs cycle, where they release ATP, which is the energy building block and of things. And I got into this a lot, and I was a biology and chemistry major at the University of Pennsylvania, and I got into studying about back then about ATP and the Krebs cycle, and how it really helps produce the most efficient form of energy. And you find this in when you're having aerobic exercise, it's more efficient, as contrasted to anaerobic exercise. So this product that Stacy's talking about is very, very empowering. It's for the energy of life, and this is what these mitochondria do. They're respiratory centers of cells. And
it's with our aging system, how our body, with our aging process, like every like 10 or 20 years, our body loses a certain amount of mitochondria.
You're exactly right about that. That we tend to lose mitochondria, and this drink that ASEA that Stacy talks about is supposedly really supposed to replenish mitochondria and cells. Just as, also it's important to understand there's a lot of products like this, like arginine also goes down, and once you get below 5,000 units of arginine, you can run into some medical problems. So it's very important as you get older to know what your arginine levels are, and take some supplemental arginine if it's getting rather low. So these are new researches that are going on, and this is fascinating, the mitochondria and how they're deplenished as time goes on, and how energy happens. And these are hot topics, such as the vagus nerve.
We have to talk about that, so I can't wait.
Stacy knows a lot more about alternate medicine than I do, but these are hot topics. It used to be thought about that somebody's IQ scores were stuck they're somebody's potential to perform in an academic milieu. And they used to think that IQ scores were stuck at a certain level. Now it's shown there's something called cognitive enhancement, where you can enhance things. And Stacy's, although my IQ scores are probably staying at the same level, Stacy's very cognitively enhanced and is growing more and more and becoming smarter and smarter with her cognitive enhancement, which is really, it impresses me a lot.
Thanks, Doc. I love you too. Oh, I love them. All right, so that's what we're going to do next week. But also, I want to talk about the dating thing as well. So maybe we can pop in another like hour somewhere and just surprise people with something.
With all the comments that are coming up, I think we should talk about dating a little more next week. So and maybe we'll head into the alternate medicine things about cognitive enhancement, about mitochondria, about the vagus nerve, which is the vagus nerve is the wanderer in the body. And it was when I was in medical school, it was very overlooked, but it's interesting. It's the longest nerve of the body, and it actually enhances the parasympathetic nervous system.
Yeah, so with the anxiety and the whole nervous system, to understand what the vagus nerve, this is a whole other area that is so important. I know that all my friends want to know about when it comes to dealing with a lot of stress and anxiety. This is a huge area with the vagus nerve, okay? So, and dealing with PTSD, this is a very important area to learn about to calm down any anxiety issues if you have them.
Yes. It's very important to understand that this vagus nerve controls the parasympathetic nervous system. When I studied gastroenterology in medical school, it's amazing. 60% of gastroenterology, because of the vagus nerve, is psychiatry. If we talk about there's a lot of psychophysiological disorders in the GI tract, and people get a lot of problems as you get older with constipation. There's a big emotional component to that, irritable bowel syndrome, and it's very important. And the vagus nerve controls a lot of this. So it used to be very neglected, and now the vagus nerve is getting attention out there, and it's wonderful to see, because it was the wanderer, and it's the longest nerve in the body. So that's important to see. Of all the cranial nerves, there's 12 cranial nerves, and this is one of the cranial nerves, and it's the longest one, and it's getting a lot of attention now. So I'm glad the vagus nerve isn't getting rejected. So eventually we'll talk about that too. But Stacy knows a lot more about this than I do. And this is alternate medicine. And Stacy really has a great deal of knowledge to give to everyone about this.
Okay. All right. So I guess we are done for tonight.
Okay. Well, actually, Karen talked about.
Okay. I'm sorry.
Well, Karen, actually, a man does not have to complete me. And that's important to understand, to feel good about yourself. So you don't need someone to complete you, but to actually, add to your life. So Karen made a good point there.
Yeah, that's Karen. She's a friend of mine. Karen Miller's a friend. There's my mother, Barbara Weinstein. Hi, Mom. And Jody. We talked with Jody. And
well, here's what Jody said again.
Sid, Sid, you look amazing. I can't believe you just had the third baby. You look amazing. How easy you went through it. Congratulations. So proud of you. Wishing everybody the best always. What gastro had,
Jody's very right about that. Gastro does have its own brain with the vagus nerve. And she sees that very astute, Jody. And then Jody's talking about, she said something else that I thought was very interesting and significant. That keep in mind that the old Jody, can you go the other direction, Stacy? That way. Keep in mind that, go back. Keep in mind that the old Jody would have made it work. It took my learning how to be alone and loving it to be able to weed. Excellent, Jody. It sounds like, you're really on the right track and thinking very clearly.
Oh, good. I'm so happy, Jody. You've got a lot to be grateful for. Okay. let's see what else. Check down here. All right, I want to just thank everybody. This was really wonderful. I want to
I
thank
really
you
enjoy.
so much.
I
You
really
had
enjoyed
fun?
doing. I had a great time doing this with
You
you.
were having fun doing it.
I had a great time.
enjoyed
This
it
is wonderful.
too.
I'm looking forward to doing a lot more with you, Stacy. This
And
is wonderful.
helping as much
And-
as we possibly
and-
can help you. So whatever questions you have, just put it underneath, leave us messages underneath. This is going to be pinned up at the top of the page on my Facebook page. So just send messages. You can get in touch with me. Yes, thank you. Please like and comment and share, and we will see you soon. Bye-bye.
Bye, everyone.
Ready to go?
Take care.
I go, okay, bye.
Bye.
Wait, we're just silly. Silliness is good.